The fossil record has nothing to tell us about whether the interactions of 11-CTS retinol with rhodopsin, transducin, and phosphorterase irreducibly complex systems could have developed step by step. So according to Behe, biology dwarfs anatomy on the question of the plausibility of macroevolution. Just as the contents of a book provide far more information than its cover, the biology of a creature provides far more information than its skeletal structure. Nevertheless, Darwinists have long argued that similarity of structure between, say, apes and humans is evidence of common ancestry, or common descent. Does it ever dawn on them that similarity of structure may be evidence of a common designer rather than a common ancestor? After all, in a world governed by certain physical and chemical laws, perhaps only a certain range of anatomical structures will be conducive to animals designed to walk on two legs. Since we all have to live in the same biosphere, we should expect some creatures to have similar designs. Moreover, while apes may have a similar structure to humans, what is often overlooked is the fact that apes and humans bear almost no resemblance to snakes, fungus, and trees. But according to Darwinism, all living things have evolved from the same ancestor. To posit Darwinism, you must be able to explain the vast dissimilarity between living things. You must explain how the palm tree, the peacock, the octopus, the locust, the bat, the hippopotamus, the porcupine, the seahorse, the Venus flytrap, the human, and mildew, for example, have all descended from the first irreducibly complex life without intelligent intervention. You also have to explain how the first life and the universe came into existence as well. Without viable explanations, which Darwinists have failed to provide, it takes too much faith to be a Darwinist. And that's why we don't have enough faith to be Darwinists. Is intelligent design an intelligent alternative? Much more could be said about macroevolution, but space does not permit us to go any further. Nevertheless, a reasonable conclusion can be drawn from the data we have investigated in this chapter. In light of the fossil record, molecular isolation, transitional difficulties, irreducible complexity, cyclical change, and genetic limits, and the fact that they can't explain the origin of the universe or a first life, you would think Darwinists might finally admit that their theory doesn't fit the observable evidence. Instead, Darwinists are still providing unsubstantiated just-so stories that actually contradict scientific observation. They continue to insist that evolution is a fact. We agree that evolution is a fact, but not in the sense the Darwinists mean it. If you define evolution as change, then certainly living beings have evolved. But this evolution is on the micro, not on the macro level. As we have seen, there's not only a lack of evidence for macroevolution, there's positive evidence that it has not occurred. If macroevolution isn't true, then what is? Well, if there's no natural explanation for the origin of new life forms, then there must be an intelligent explanation. It's the only other option. There's no halfway house between intelligence and non-intelligence. Either intelligence was involved or it wasn't. But Darwinists don't like this option. So once they exhaust their ability to adequately defend their own position with unbiased scientific evidence, which is very quickly, Darwinists typically turn their guns on the intelligent design people, those of us who believe there's intelligence behind the universe and life. Here are their typical objections and our responses. Objection: intelligent design is not science. Answer: as we have seen, science is a search for causes, and there are only two types of causes, intelligent and non-intelligent, natural. The Darwinists claim that intelligent design is not science is based on their biased definition of science. But that's arguing in a circle. If your definition of science rules out intelligent causes beforehand, then you'll never consider intelligent design science. The irony for the Darwinists is this: if intelligent design is not science, then neither is Darwinism. Why? Because both Darwinists and intelligent design scientists are trying to discover what happened in the past. Origin questions are forensic questions, and thus require the use of the forensic science principles we already have discussed. In fact, for Darwinists to rule out intelligent design from the realm of science, in addition to ruling out themselves, they would also have to rule out archaeology, cryptology, criminal and accident forensic investigations, and the search for extraterrestrial life, SETI. These are all legitimate forensic sciences that look into the past for intelligent causes. Something must be wrong with the Darwinist definition of science. Table 6.2 shows the difference between empirical science and forensic science. Empirical, operation science, studies present, studies regularities, studies repeatable, recreation possible, studies how things work, tested by repeatable experiment, asks how something operates. Examples: how does water fall? How does rocky road? How does an engine work? How does ink adhere to paper? How does life function? How does the universe operate? Forensic, origin science, studies past, studies singularities, studies unrepeatable, recreation impossible, studies how things began, tested by uniformity, asks what its origin is. Examples: what's the origin of a hydroelectric plant? What's the origin of Mount Rushmore? What's the origin of an engine? What's the origin of this book? What's the origin of life? What's the origin of the universe? Objection: intelligent design commits the God of the gaps fallacy. Answer: the God of the gaps fallacy occurs when someone falsely believes that God caused the event when it really was caused by undiscovered natural phenomena. For example, people used to believe that lightning was caused directly by God. There was a gap in our knowledge of nature, so we attributed the effect to God. Darwinists assert that theists are doing the same thing by claiming that God created the universe and life. Are they correct? No, for a number of reasons. First, when we conclude that intelligence created the first cell or the human brain, it's not simply because we lack evidence of a natural explanation. It's also because we have positive, empirically detectable evidence for an intelligent cause. A message, specified complexity, is empirically detectable. When we detect a message, like "take out the garbage, Mom," or 1,000 encyclopedias, we know that it must come from an intelligent being because all our observable experience tells us that messages come only from intelligent beings. Every time we observe a message, it comes from an intelligent being. We couple this data with the fact that we never observe natural laws creating messages, and we know an intelligent being must be the cause. That's a valid scientific conclusion based on observation and repetition. It's not an argument from ignorance, nor is it based on any gap in our knowledge. Second, intelligent design scientists are open to both natural and intelligent causes. They are not opposed to continued research into a natural explanation for the first life. They're simply observing that all known natural explanations fail, and all empirically detectable evidence points to an intelligent designer. Now, one can question the wisdom of continuing to look for a natural cause of life. William Dembski, who has published extensive research on intelligent design, asks, when does determination, to find a natural cause, become pig-headedness? How long are we to continue a search before we have the right to give up the search and declare not only that continuing the search is vain, but also that the very object of the search is non-existent? Consider the implications of Dembski's question. Should we keep looking for a natural cause for phenomena like Mount Rushmore, or messages like "take out the garbage, Mom"? When is the case closed? Walter Bradley, a co-author of the seminal work The Mystery of Life's Origin, believes there doesn't seem to be the potential of finding a natural explanation for the origin of life. He adds, I think people who believe that life emerged naturalistically need to have a great deal more faith than people who reasonably infer that there's an intelligent designer. Regardless of whether or not you think we should keep looking for a natural explanation, the main point is that Intelligent design scientists are open to both natural and intelligent causes. It just so happens that an intelligent cause best fits the evidence. Third, the intelligent design conclusion is falsifiable. In other words, ID could be disproven if natural laws were someday discovered to create specified complexity. However, the same cannot be said about the Darwinist position. Darwinists don't allow falsification of their creation story because, as we have described, they don't allow any other creation story to be considered. Their science is not tentative or open to correction. It's more close-minded than the most dogmatic church doctrine that Darwinists are so apt to criticize. Finally, it's actually the Darwinists who are committing a God of the gaps fallacy. Darwin himself was once accused of considering natural selection an active power or deity. See Chapter 4 of Origin of Species. But it seems that natural selection actually is the deity or God of the gaps for the Darwinists of today. When they are totally at a loss for how irreducibly complex, information-rich biological systems came into existence, they simply cover their gap in knowledge by claiming that natural selection, time, and chance did it. The ability of such a mechanism to create information-rich biological systems runs counter to the observational evidence. Mutations are nearly always harmful, and time and chance do the Darwinists no good, as we explained in Chapter 5. At best, natural selection may be responsible for minor changes in living species, but it cannot explain the origin of the basic forms of life. You need a living thing to start with for any natural selection to take place. Yet, despite the obvious problems with their mechanism, Darwinists insist that it covers any gap in their knowledge. Moreover, they willfully ignore the positive, empirically detectable evidence for an intelligent being. This is not science, but the dogma of a secular religion. Darwinists, like the opponents of Galileo, are letting their religion overrule scientific observations. Objection. Intelligent design is religiously motivated. Answer. There are two aspects to this objection. The first is that some intelligent design people may be religiously motivated. So what? Does that make intelligent design false? Does the religious motivation of some Darwinists make Darwinism false? No, the truth doesn't lie in the motivation of the scientists, but in the quality of the evidence. A scientist's motivation or bias doesn't necessarily mean he's wrong. He could have a bias and still be right. Bias or motivation isn't the main issue. Truth is. Sometimes the objection is stated this way: you can't believe anything he says about origins because he's a creationist. Well, if the sword cuts at all, it cuts both ways. We could just as easily say, you can't believe anything he says about origins because he's a Darwinist. Why are creationist conclusions immediately thought to be biased, but Darwinist conclusions automatically considered objective? Because most people don't realize that atheists have a worldview just like creationists. As we are seeing, the atheist worldview is not neutral and actually requires more faith than the creationists. Now, as we have said earlier, if philosophical or religious biases prevent someone from interpreting the evidence correctly, then we would have grounds for questioning that person's conclusions. In the current debate, that problem seems to afflict Darwinists more than anyone else. Yet, the main point is that even if someone is motivated by religion or philosophy, their conclusions can be corrected by an honest look at the evidence. Scientists on both sides of the fence may have a difficult time being neutral, but if they have integrity, they can be objective. The second aspect of this objection is the charge that intelligent design people don't have any evidence for their view. They're simply parroting what the Bible says. This aspect of the objection doesn't work either. Intelligent design beliefs may be consistent with the Bible, but they are not based on the Bible. As we have seen, intelligent design is a conclusion based on empirically detectable evidence, not sacred texts. As Michael Behe observes, life on Earth at its most fundamental level, in its most critical components, is the product of intelligent activity. The conclusion of intelligent design flows naturally from the data itself, not from sacred books or sectarian beliefs.